Good afternoon, friends and Rotarians, to today's meeting of the Rotary Club of Tulsa. I'm pretty excited for today's guest. I just learned he had a full 18-hour vacation between his last job and his new job, so thank you, Mayor, for being here. Let's begin our program with invocation and pledge from past President Matt Davis, followed by guest introductions from Sheree Gardner.
Bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, on this beautiful Tulsa December morning, we give thanks for GT and Susan and their extended family's commitment to making Tulsa a fabulous city, one that defines giving in so many ways. Bless them as they continue their enrichment of Tulsa and Oklahoma in new and exciting ways. Bless Monroe Nichols and all of our newly elected leaders in our city, state, and nation. Guide them in leading with compassion, empathy, and wisdom. In your holy name we pray. Amen. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Good morning. As I call the host Rotarian and their guest, if they would please stand up so they can be acknowledged. Host Rotarian Shannon Vollmer has a guest, Carolyn Sloan. Ben and Kathy Gorell has Bethany Wilson as their guest today. Carl Vincent has a guest, Tony Olive, who's also, I'm sorry? Aliva. And he's a former member. Barney James has a guest, David Waldron. I always like to say everybody's name right because I have many different names. You're welcome. I answer to it, as long as it's not bad. I have a wonderful guest, the love of my life, Lindy Gardner. Aww. Alan Wieland has his love of the life, Beverly Wieland. Jake Dollarhide has a guest of Bill Grafe. Host Rotarian Eric Hill has Matthew Solak as his guest. Chaz Craig has wonderful guests, a list of guests, Clark Cunningham, Cotton Gim, Dimitri Wolfsven, John Gottwals, Dylan Siebert, and then my friend Dylan Harden has Michael Vincent. Sorry, they're starting to stick. David Davis Woodliff. Taylor Gio. This is a Rotarian soon to be, so everyone please find her and tell her how wonderful we are. Welcome, Taylor. And then our fabulous Laura Garrett, our designee governor nominee. And then everybody give a big hi to Adam Jones from the Jinx Rotary. Okay, everybody thank you for being here.
Welcome to all of our guests for being here today. I know we're in for a good program. Now for a special leadership announcement from past President Paul Baumann.
Thank you, President Daniel. It's my honor today to introduce the continuing leadership and newly elected directors for 2025 and 2026. Please come forward when your name is called and line up in front of the stage. Serving as the 112th president of the Rotary Club of Tulsa in 2025 and 2026 is Carl Vincent. President-elect Karen McCannell. Immediate past president Daniel Gomez. Chairman of the board Bill Vogel. Club Foundation trustee who's serving a 5-year term is Kathy Gurrell. Secretary Treasurer is Kevin Murray. Budget Chair and Secretary Treasurer-elect is David Bryant. Directors at large are Kaiden Creekpalm and Jerry Stamper. And last month you selected from a slate of 3 amazing candidates for Director at Large position. It's my honor to announce that Joe Moore is the candidate who received the majority of the votes. And Joe will begin a 3-year term starting July 1st of 2025. Please join me in congratulating and thanking this outstanding group of leaders for your club.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to everybody who will be serving this club next year. I know that it's a great time commitment. I'm almost halfway through, and it feels like an eternity, but I'm happy to continue through the spring. Now we have a side mic announcement from Carl Vincent.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. How many of you have been to a Rotary International Conference? Please raise your hand. Scott Philstrip, where did you go? Chicago. Hannibal, where'd you go? Toronto. Corey? Los Angeles. President Daniel?
I went to Singapore.
Singapore. Is Hal Allen here? Phil, where'd you go? Munich. Mr. Gurrell? Okay, so these people have been to a Rotary International Conference, and I think if you ask any of them, they would tell you it had a significant impact on their lives. Would you say that's true, President Daniel?
It's absolutely true. The amount of people that show up is awe-inspiring itself, but from all different points of the planet, it really is impressive.
So coming up in June of 2025, the 21st through the 25th, the Rotary International Conference will be in Calgary, Canada. That's 2 short flights from Tulsa, or a 2-day driving trip for those of you with motor homes. Our Executive Director, Tina Miller, will be attending that conference. My wife and I will be attending that conference. Our President-elect nominee, Karen McCannell, will be attending that conference. I would like to invite as many of you who can to please come and attend that conference with us. Everyone is welcome. It's a remarkable gathering. The early bird registration ends December 15th. And you do save literally hundreds of dollars with that early bird registration. I hope some of you will sign up and join us so that you can see the impact that a Rotary International Conference can have on your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I share the sentiment. I hope that many in this room will join the International Conference in Calgary. I can tell you if you have a good side driver, you can do it in one day. I do that regularly to my wife's family in Connecticut, but either way, I do know that past President John Raines and his wife will also be there in their RV. So there's going to be a lot of familiar faces. Hope to see a lot of you there. Current international president Stephanie Yurchik, often says in her speeches and in her blurb in the monthly Rotary magazine that the magic of Rotary does not appear out of nowhere. We create the magic of Rotary in our actions and how we help our communities. December is a great month for that, especially for the Rotary Club of Tulsa. This week alone, we have two very important initiatives that this club is well known for in the community and beyond. First, tomorrow is Salvation Army bell ringing. My understanding is that there are still some slots available and that there will be availability to sign up for it just outside the hall as soon as this meeting is over. If you've had any sort of problems with the online check-in, or if you're like me and you make these decisions at the last minute, please go ahead and sign up for that. And of course, this Saturday will be Shop with the Cop, another well-known initiative of this club that does a lot of good. For people who remember, I spent a lot of time as the chair of our Partners in Education Committee. So the fact that we get to do this for students at Celia Clinton Elementary really is moving. Karen McCannell is out of town right now, but she's organizing it. She will be there on Saturday morning. Let's please have a lot of support for that initiative because, again, it is something that our club is very well known for, and it's very consistent with this year's theme, sharing the magic of Rotary in our community. Our Rotarian of the day today is DJ Morrow Ingram, who's been a member of the Rotary Club of Tulsa since 1995 and a member of Rotary since 1989. She has served many roles with our club. As Sergeant at Arms, she was the longtime editor and writer for the Rotary publication The Gasser, and she currently serves as Club Service Director. Please welcome our Rotarian of the day, DJ Morrow Ingram.
Thank you, President Daniel. Every time I hear how long I've been in Rotary, it's like, wow, am I that old, or was I just like 10 when I joined? But I was really privileged to join very shortly after they allowed women in, so that was pretty cool. I am so proud and pleased to introduce today's speaker, the 40th mayor of the city of Tulsa, G.T. Bynum. I'm going to keep it short because I think we all pretty know everything about him, but I think it's worth noting that G.T. hails from a long family committed to public service. He is a native of Tulsa, but his great-great-paternal grandfather served as Tulsa's second mayor. His maternal grandfather, Robert LaFortune, held the office from 1970 to 78, and in continuing the legacy, he became our 40th. He and his wife, Susan, are raising two children, Robert and Annabelle, representing the sixth generation of Bynums to call Tulsa home. Before he was elected mayor, he served 8 years on the Tulsa City Council and was the youngest city council chairman in Tulsa history. His time as mayor, he oversaw devastating natural disasters, COVID-19 pandemic, demonstrating Tulsa's resilience and strength. He oversaw the 100th anniversary of the June 21 race massacre. And now he is going to be, or now he is, I guess, for 18 hours or something like that. He's Vice President of Community and Government Affairs for St. Francis Health System. So glad to have you here with us today, GT. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Before I say anything, I want to thank you for what you've done for my self-esteem by inviting me today. I've talked to a lot of former mayors, and all they can talk about is how nobody calls you anymore after you leave. I'll tell you, today I'm reminded already of how much I'm going to miss the job. I missed by 48 hours getting to give the key to the city to Hulk Hogan, who is here in town today promoting his new beer. The Hulkster will be down at Reese's at 41st and Peoria if any of you want to go by after this is over. Many of you know I love the history of our city, and in looking ahead towards leaving office, when I ran in 2016, I said that if I were fortunate to be reelected, I would only serve 2 terms. When I was running in 2016, or even before that, I asked my granddad, who many of you knew, when he was the mayor, the lowest he ever got in a mayoral election was 59% of the vote. in the 50 years since he was the mayor, we've only had 2 people exceed that at all. And so he was just wildly popular. And I asked him one time, why'd you quit after 8 years? Like, you could have done this forever. And his answer to me was, if you're doing it the right way, 8 years is enough. And I didn't fully appreciate that at the time. I committed to that when I ran in 2016, that I would only do it for 8 years. But now I really get it. It is great to have a new mayor with new ideas and new energy and new team come in. I think that's so important in jobs like this. But knowing that the end was coming, I look back at our history as a city and my predecessors and well, what'd they do after they left office? I know what all of them did, the 39 mayors we had before me, what they did while they were in the job, but what did they do after they left? And I based it largely, of course you mentioned my great-great-grandfather was the second mayor of Tulsa. He ran in 1899 because he thought we should have a school. Tulsa did not have a school at the time, so he ran and worked with a group of community leaders to found Tulsa Public School, where the Mid-Continent Tower is. There's a lot about it in Mr. Bumgarner's book that he got written about 4th and Boston. And he did that, and then he refused to ever run for re-election. Like, he was a one-issue candidate of the 1890s. And when he was done, he just went back to the trading post that he worked at. Well, I don't have one of those. In more recent history, we had several of my predecessors went back to businesses they had. Mayor Maxwell owned a floral shop in downtown Tulsa. He went back to that. Mayor Hughley and Mayor Bartlett both had oil companies that they went back to. Couple folks went into higher education. Mayor Randall, of course, left office to become the president at UCAT. And then Mayor Taylor became the dean of the business school at University of Tulsa. Susan Savage became Oklahoma Secretary of State. Of course, Jim Inhofe became a member of Congress. Bill LaFortune is now a judge. And by the way, to the best of my knowledge, the only former mayor to be elected to anything else. I should tell you about how if people are running for this job looking to climb the political ladder, they are going to the wrong place. And then Mayor Crawford moved to Ohio. So those were not, a lot of those were not options for me. I'm not an attorney, but I wanted to keep serving our community. Other mayors, past mayors, ran for mayor again later and lost. Mayor Crawford lost, I think it was in when we had that free-for-all, when you had everybody running for mayor. It was this nuance in our city charter. Mayor Randall left, and we had a brand new city charter, and the wording in it had not been clarified. And so, many of you will recall, we had a winner-take-all, one-round race for mayor, and there was no filing fee. And so you had 60-plus people file and run for mayor that year. Susan Savage and Dewey Bartlett ended up being the top 2 vote getters. I think Susan got like 40% of the vote, and Dewey got 29. Mayor Crawford ran in that race and lost. Of course, Mayor Taylor ran and lost. So it is not, once you leave, the door is slammed shut. History is not on your side if you're looking to go back and run again later. But the model for me in everything I've done in my life, in my family, in serving at the city, is my grandfather. And that is my model for life moving forward, too. My grandfather left office and then really started an entire new career in community service. Became a member of the board at St. John, became a member of the board at Philbrook and the Boy Scouts. He served on the PAC Trust. As mayor, I got to be on the PAC Trust when I got elected in 2016. He was still on it. He had been serving on the PAC Trust longer than I had been alive. And in each of those that I just told you about, he served on those boards for 40-plus years on all of them. and built up this incredibly rewarding for him career as a community servant. And that is so appealing to me. It takes the things that you love about elected office without having to go through the muck of politics. And so I'm really excited about this new job. I'll talk about that in a moment, but I do want to take just a couple minutes to reflect on what we as a community accomplished in the last 8 years, which is remarkable. When I was running in 2016, one of the main reasons I was running was because I wanted us to expect more from ourselves as a city. When I moved home from D.C. in 2005, I had worked as a Senate aide up there for Senator Nichols and Senator Coburn, came back because my wife and I wanted to have kids here, and I love the history of our city. I love the ambition that Tulsa has had historically, and yet when I moved home and our son was born, like the front page story on the paper was bemoaning the fact that Tulsa got outfoxed by Broken Arrow for the Bass Pro Shop. And this was the great issue of our time that kids are going to be reading about in history books one day. The great Bass Pro Shop loss to Broken Arrow. And then you had a group of folks bring up this proposal to put water in the river. And I loved that. Thought, okay, there's a big goal. There's something that we can be excited about, that we can aim toward, that we're going to leave to the next generation of Tulsans and say, yes, previous generations built the Spavinaw water line. Previous generations built one of the first airports anywhere in the world. Previous generations built skyscrapers in downtown Tulsa when it made no economic sense to build up rather than out, just because world-class cities have skyscrapers. This is our generation's chance to do something big. And then it failed at the ballot. And I decided I was going to run for city council to try and get that done. Throughout all of this, the focus was on making Tulsa a globally competitive world-class city. When you look around the world, the cities that are achieving the greatest outcomes, whether that's in economic growth and population growth and health outcomes, they are major regions competing with other regions around the world. They're not cities fighting with suburbs over shopping centers. And so we had to reorient our thinking. You saw the business community here already doing this. Tulsa Chamber had already become the Tulsa Regional Chamber. You saw our philanthropic community aiming high, making us one of the best cities in America already when it came to early childhood education. But the city government was mired in managing decline, in my opinion. And so I ran wanting us to be a globally competitive world-class city. Well, that means a whole lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so the city council and I narrowed it down to 3 main things. Number 1, you have to be a safe city. Well, in the last 8 years, we transformed the way that we do policing in Tulsa, implementing the Real-Time Information Center, which brings 21st century technology and deploys it to our officers out in the field. Our officers tell me this is the biggest advancement in policing since radios got put in squad cars. Today, nearly half of all the sworn officers working in the Tulsa Police Department were hired in the last 8 years. We've gone through the largest surge in staffing in the history of the department at a time when it's never been more challenging to find and hire new police officers. In the Tulsa Fire Department, we also went through the greatest surge in staffing in TFD history. Today, 1/3 of all of our firefighters were hired in the last 8 years. The great challenge in the fire department over the last 8 years was that their fleet was in horrible disrepair. The city went a decade without buying any new fire trucks for whatever reason. And a fire truck is not something where it's like, we got this beater, let's just go down to the fire truck lot and buy a new truck. Any of you of an entrepreneurial bent in here, the fire truck business is a great business to be in. It's 18 to 24 month lead time. Every single one is custom made. They run $1.5 million for a basic engine, up to $3 million for a ladder truck. And we have gone through almost a complete overhaul of our fleet over the last 8 years, because when I came in, we had firefighters driving trucks that were breaking down at such a rate, there was concern that we would not be able to reach fires at the acceptable standard rate because even our backups would be out of commission. The only thing that saved us before we started replacing that fleet is that Tulsa, the city of Tulsa, has the #1 fleet maintenance team of any city in North America. That's independently rated. That's not the proud former mayor bragging on them. And they kept that fleet operating while the citizens of Tulsa approved the initiatives that got us the funding and bought us the time for those new trucks to get manufactured. So now you'll notice them. If it's a black and red color scheme driving around, those are the new trucks. And you should be proud of them because you paid an awful lot of money for them, but they are giving our firefighters the tools they need to do their job safely. And speaking of the fire department, and this is not something that we just did in the last 8 years while I was mayor. This was the accumulation of something over time. We have an ISO-rated #1 fire department. That is the highest rating that a fire department can get. So they truly are one of the best. And while I'm talking about police and fire, I just want to take a sidebar because they're not here. So I will just tell you, I hope you know how much it means that you have the Above and Beyond Awards every year. It means so much to them. They won't ever admit it because they're humble and they're amazing public servants. But they go and do these jobs often in anonymity unless something horrible happens. And to have that light shined on them and chosen by their peers and to talk and put a human face on a firefighter or a police officer, it just means so much to them. And I cannot thank you enough for doing that every year. That's been one of the best things I've gotten to attend every year as a mayor. Public safety, though, isn't just about police and fire. We also, in the 1970s, we were rated the #1 most flood-prone city in America. When my grandfather was mayor, we had no flood zoning in Tulsa. They started doing that while he was mayor. We had annexed in 1966, land that tripled the geographic footprint of the city of Tulsa, which was a masterstroke by Mayor Maxwell because Tulsa would be a suburb of Broken Arrow today if that had not been done. And the areas that he annexed in have been the growth engines, South Tulsa and East Tulsa, for Tulsa over the intervening 60 years. The trade-off, though, were two things. One, you have all sorts of street infrastructure you got to build out, which we are still catching up on because, and I will say this now because I don't have to get elected anything, voters voted down for decades street maintenance programs over and over and over again through the 60s and the 70s. We are still paying the price for that decision 50 years later and trying to catch up with all of the work that needs to be done. But there's also, you built new streets in the newer parts of town that were 2-lane roads that now can't handle the growth that has occurred. And so we're catching up on deferred maintenance in the older parts of the city and building out infrastructure in the newer parts of the city. And then we brought in all these areas of the city where you had things built around flood-prone areas. And so the city of Tulsa spent hundreds of millions of dollars over decades building out what is now a marvel to civil engineers around the world when it comes to our flood protection. And we became, just 3 years ago, one of only 2 cities in America rated by FEMA as a #1 flood-proof city. And the other is some little teeny tiny town in California. Great for them. We're a large city, and we went from being the most flood-prone city in America to rated as the highest level of safety that you can get. And that has a direct impact on not just public safety, but insurance rates and the cost of doing business in our city. So we are a safer city today than we were 8 years ago. The second big thing is you have to be a city of opportunity for everybody. And this is one of the areas where I think we are engaged in very long-term work. The first one would be our work to address racial disparities in our city. We created the Resilient Tulsa Strategy, which is Tulsa's first ever strategic plan to address racial disparities in Tulsa. We created the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Equity, which is a team of people that comes to work every day to implement that strategy. And we partner with external partners, including Tulsa Area United Way, to do the Tulsa Equality Indicators. It's an annual self-audit of inequality in our city, because you can't improve things if you're not measuring how you're doing. In all of this, the purpose, the goal, is to address what I think is the most disgraceful statistic about Tulsa, which is the fact that kids growing up in one part of our city are expected to live a decade less than kids in a different part of our city. Every kid in Tulsa should have an equal opportunity for a great life, regardless of the part of town they happen to grow up in. And I'm proud of the way that our city has publicly focused on addressing this. When I was running in 2016, there were a lot of people who said, that's really embarrassing for Tulsa, we should not talk about that. I'd rather be the city that acknowledges the thing that is wrong and is focused as a community on addressing it. And I think Tulsa has proven itself to be that kind of a city. A great example of this is our work around economic development. We have been laser focused as a city on improving economic opportunity in North Tulsa. We recruited over $1 billion in private investment into North Tulsa over the last 8 years, and in every penny of that has been required job training programs so that folks that live in the area benefit from the jobs that are created. If you're going to get an incentive from the city, you've got to be a partner with us in creating greater economic mobility for folks that live in the area. We don't want them to just stay there and watch other people benefit from the investments that are made in their community. This is very important because one of the greatest opportunities for us to impact that life expectancy disparity are the social determinants of health. A lot of people, when they hear that life expectancy disparity, they think it's just public health and we need to build more clinics. Well, that's part of it, but a lot of work has been done on that. A huge thing that impacts that is economic development and investment. And in Tulsa, we're not just focused on that, we have now systematized it. We took all of our old city authorities that focused on economic development, the Tulsa Development Authority, the Industrial Authority, the Economic Development Commission, even the Parking Authority, the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. We merged them all into the Tulsa Authority for Economic Opportunity and gave it as the mission, not you need to have job openings so the mayor gets to cut a ribbon and get the picture in the paper, but instead, the mission of that organization is to create equality of opportunity in our city using economic development. So when we do economic development in Tulsa, if the city is going to be incentivizing that, the purpose of that is creating equality of opportunity in our city. And so I'm excited about that because that's the kind of system that you have to change that will improve things over time. You cannot fix everything in 4 years or 8 years or 16 years. It requires decades of sustained focus and momentum. Another thing that has been difficult but is important, and I'm proud of this generation of Tulsans for sucking it up and doing it, is looking for the graves of 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre victims. This is something that I think people incorrectly thought for a long time was going to have some giant outcry against it and would be politically problematic. The reality is when we launched that, I had a couple people upset about it who mistook it as some sort of like archaeological expedition. But most people were proud that the city was facing up to this because they didn't want to live in a city that might have mass graves in it and didn't try to find them. And I can tell you, that search, when you're looking for bodies that were hidden a century ago, it's very hard to find them. But everything, and we started this in my 3rd year as mayor, it's been a very challenging search. We know for a fact, we have documentary evidence that there are 18 race massacre victims buried in Oak Lawn Cemetery because Tulsa County paid for these unidentified victims to be buried there. We just don't know where they are or who they are. So you can imagine the challenge of trying to find bodies in a cemetery. I mean, that's what I've said. It's not like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's like looking for a needle in a pile of needles. And yet, using modern technology, this last year, we were able to identify the first of those race massacre victims, a man named C.L. Daniel, who wasn't even from Tulsa, who had never been mentioned in any previous scholarship around the race massacre. He was a World War I veteran who had just been honorably discharged and was traveling home to his family in Georgia, stopped here in Tulsa when the race massacre was happening, was killed, buried, and his mother died never knowing where her son was. His family did not know until 103 years later when we called and told them that we had found him. That's what this generation of Tulsans is doing. And it isn't free. This generation of Tulsans has invested in this search because it's the right thing to do. We can't control what happened in our community 103 years ago, but we can control what we do today. And I'm really proud of how Tulsans are handling this. That is just one family. His family came here. We got to have a beautiful memorial service that Hannibal spoke at. And it was so powerful to see these descendants of his come here and finally see where he's buried, and now they get to decide where his final resting place will be. Rather than somebody who didn't even know who he was, putting him in an unmarked hole over a century ago. We've also been very focused as a community on making Tulsa the best city it can be for our immigrant community. This is the fastest growing population in Tulsa. The future of our city is tied to the immigrant community. And we will be successful if we live up to the hope and expectation that immigrants place in Tulsa when they decide to leave their homeland and come here, or we will fail because we weren't that kind of a city. We've been very focused on making sure Tulsa is the best city in America for immigrants. And that started with something that seems so superficial, but has been one of the great things that we've been able to do in the last several years is we have a citizenship ceremony every single month at City Hall. And the powerful thing about that is, one, the folks come here from all around the world. They go through the arduous process of becoming a United States citizen, and then they take the oath in that city council chamber, and they are honored by our police and fire honor guard. The mayor or the chief of police has been at every single one of those ceremonies that we've had to welcome them to Tulsa and thank them for choosing America and proving that we remain a beacon of freedom and opportunity for people from all around the world. But we're engaged in this and a lot of other work, and I'm thankful that Mayor Nichols is very committed to continuing that work moving forward. So we're a city today of greater opportunity for people than we were 8 years ago. The last one is the most tangible thing that you can see. That's the built environment. You have to be a city that is building the city that you want to leave to the next generation of Tulsans. And you think, 8 years ago, we didn't have a gathering place. 8 years ago, we didn't have a Mother Road Market. 8 years ago, Route 66 was basically an example of an underutilized tourism asset because people would come from all around the world to drive down the Mother Road, and then they'd hit the hometown of the guy who created it, and we had nothing here. Now, Route 66 is revitalized in Tulsa, and as we head towards the centennial, it's going to be a centerpiece for the celebration of Route 66 all across America. We've lived through, over the last 8 years, the greatest period of investment from the public sector, the philanthropic community, and the business community, all of them. And that has led to a tremendous amount of momentum. I was thankful. I mean, I talked at the beginning about failing on the lake. We just opened this summer a lake that people have been talking about since the mid-1960s in Tulsa, right on with the greatest park gift in American history on the eastern shore of it. We just had a preview 2 weeks ago of the museum that will house the greatest collection of American art and history outside of what the federal government owns at Gilcrease Museum. And the only reason it's not open today is because that collection is so massive, it's going to take 1.5 years to 2 years to load it all back into the museum. And I cannot wait for Tulsans to see it. It's going to be amazing. And all of this, the reason these things around the built environment, I think, are so important for us, not just so we can have pride in them as a city. There's two big reasons they're important. One, it sends a signal to the private sector, to people who are thinking about investing in our city, that Tulsans are investing in themselves. That is one of the most common things I've heard from companies who are looking at relocating to Tulsa, and I ask them, why are you looking at Tulsa? And when I first came in, it was great transportation network, plentiful water supply, cheap electricity, great workforce. It's like, okay, not super inspiring, but those are all positives, I guess. Today, what I've heard probably for the last 4 or 5 years, we see how much Tulsans are investing in your city, and it's a smart move for us to be a part of that. So Tulsans, by making these historic investments in our community, are sending that signal to the private sector. The other people that you're sending that signal to, and I think this is going to be the most important in the long term, are kids who are growing up in Tulsa today. I think about my children. I have a son who's a senior in high school, will be going to college in the fall. I have a daughter who's a freshman in high school. Their generation has grown up in a city that totally takes it for granted that we have the greatest park of any city in America. They totally take it for granted that we have a lake in the middle of our city. They totally take it for granted that we're the home of the greatest collection of American art and history and home to an Olympic sport. And I think that is awesome. Because what that has done for their generation is it has raised the bar of expectation for them. My generation, it was, well, there's a lot of cool things happening in Dallas. And then it was, well, Oklahoma City is really crushing it, huh? Wow, they got Bricktown and the Thunder. But for my kids' generation, it was all these amazing things happening in Tulsa. And so I think about the level of creativity that will unlock for them moving forward with that level of expectation. Everything that I just told you about, by the way, that we've done in the last 8 years, nothing magical occurred to allow this to happen. The only difference was that we as a city government aimed higher. I'm a big believer. You do not achieve great things unless you are trying to achieve great things. Maybe you don't achieve them, but at least you failed trying. You are guaranteed not to achieve them if you never even try. And Tulsans always had the ingredients for success here. We just were not aiming high enough. By having that spirit of high expectations for the next generation of Tulsans coming along, Tulsa is going to do amazing things over the next 25 to 50 years. City operations, this is kind of inside baseball, but it's stuff I'm very proud of because 90% of the job of being mayor is not out giving speeches like this. 90% of the job of being mayor is running the city government. We have a strong mayor form of government here in Tulsa. The mayor runs the city day to day. We don't have a city manager. My friend down the street in Oklahoma City, Mayor Holt, he has a city manager who runs the city day to day. That's why he can go be a law school dean and still be mayor at the same time. And by the way, I think it is vastly superior to have the person who's the CEO of your government directly accountable to the voters. I don't like having a city council, a majority of a city council, decide who your city manager is going to be and maybe not even have the mayor on the same page with the city manager. You ought to be able to choose who's running your city government every 4 years. And the key is the team that they build around them. A few things. Tulsa today is now an international model for the use of data when it comes to governance, to the degree that one of my new career things, I'm going to be a coach for Johns Hopkins University for 2 different mayors, starting in a couple months, on the use of data in their cities. And that'll be something that I do ongoing moving forward, because Tulsa has become recognized as one of the best cities in the world when it comes to using data. When Mayor Nichols was sworn in on Monday, he was the first mayor since 1992 to come into office with a budget surplus. Every budget that I got approved by the city council was approved unanimously and without amendment because we worked together to create it. It wasn't something like I saw when I was on the council where the mayor came in and with some big surprise, dropped the budget on the council, and then we fought over it for 2 months. The level of collaboration there allowed us to get things done in a business-like way. Every single one of them was balanced. Our rainy day fund today is up over 1,000% from where it was when I came into office, and our total cash reserves as a city are up over 150%. And that is crucial for protecting our first responders when the inevitable economic decline happens. Not saying it's coming tomorrow, but it will happen at some point. And it was very impactful for me as a city councilor when I got elected. I got elected right at the outset of the Great Recession and got to be in that council chamber and see firefighters and police officers and their families begging for their jobs because the city had zero cash reserves to protect them in a recession. Well, our future mayors and councilors will not have that because of the fiscal discipline that the city has established. So, moving forward, as I said, my granddad is the model for me. When I moved back home, I talked about that initiative to get water in the river. Well, the leader of that was a guy named John Kelly Warren. And he wrote a letter to the editor in the Tulsa World at the outset of that, pointing out that we should not be trying to compete with neighboring cities. We should be working with our neighboring cities to be one of the best cities in the world. That ought to be our level of expectation. And I had so much admiration for what he wrote in that piece, I totally ripped it off and have used it for 20 years. And he is the board chair at the St. Francis Health System. I've always admired how St. Francis had that mindset of wanting to be one of the best in the world. Not just the best hospital in Tulsa, but one of the best health systems in the world. Today, they are the 11th largest health system in America, and widely regarded in the hospital community as one of the best in the world. And it's because of that mindset. And so I was thinking about a year and a half ago, trying to think about what I would do. My great fear was I'd leave City Hall, wouldn't be mayor anymore, and I would always get to look back with pride on what we got done, but that's kind of the end of the road for me on getting to make an impact in the community. And then I got a call from Dr. Cliff Robertson, the CEO at St. Francis, and invited me out to lunch, and he said, here's the deal, we want St. Francis to be, we've done this job of building this amazing healthcare system, but we want St. Francis to move outside the walls of the hospital and out into the community and be a much more engaged community partner, and we want you to lead that effort. And we will wait until you make up your mind, but we want you to know we were here first. And so I had a number of other, wonderful opportunities that came up, but I kept thinking about the opportunity that was there with St. Francis, the chance to make that kind of historic, significant impact in our city through our largest employer in one of the greatest health systems in America. And it was too good to pass up. And so, as was mentioned, I left office at 2 o'clock on Monday. By the way, I talked with former mayors, what's it like to leave office? And one of them was Bill de Blasio, used to be the mayor of New York City. And he told me a story about how mayor of New York City, the tradition there is when the new mayor is sworn in at midnight on New Year's Day. And so the outgoing mayor gets to go down to Times Square when the ball drops and preside over that while the new mayor is being sworn in, and then you're done. So he's like, so I'm there, we've just come out of the pandemic, the ball drops, tens of millions of people around the world are watching, and then we leave, and I'm walking down the street with my wife and this phalanx of bodyguards and aides, and by the time we get to the end of the block, it's just me and my wife and one cop. I did not have anything as dramatic as that, but I did want to get started to work right away. I did not want to sit around the house with my golden retriever thinking about not being mayor anymore. And I will tell you, I haven't started a new job in 8 years. It is exhausting. I went from being CEO of 4,000 employees of a $1 billion organization to yesterday, the great achievement was I figured out how to get my email to work. But I've had a wonderful opportunity just in the last day to meet with a lot of the folks who work at St. Francis. I'm so excited to be part of that team. As I told my wife last night when I got home, it's like it's this team of just kind geniuses. How lucky am I to get to be part of that and work with them? And so I will just close with, I think I have, I'm fortunate. My wife, Susan, is now leading University of Oklahoma's campus here in Tulsa. And I'm so proud of her and the work that she's doing there. The Stevenson Cancer Center that they have coming along there is going to be of historic impact here for Tulsa. The Polytech Institute that they're building there is going to be a huge economic driver for us in Tulsa. Our son was just named all-district tight end for the year for the Bishop Kelly Comets, so I couldn't be prouder of him. And our daughter is a freshman at Booker T and loving it there. And so it's an amazing time in our lives, but I end my time as mayor just with tremendous gratitude for the faith that Tulsans placed in me. That job is the greatest honor that Tulsans can give one of our neighbors. And I'm so thankful that I had 8 years to serve our city. I'm thankful that a friend of mine is now in that office who shares the level of ambition that I have for our city, who wants our city to be great, and who isn't going to be satisfied with where we are today. And that is exactly the kind of mindset that we've got to have in the mayor's office if we're going to continue to be the greatest city in the world, which I think we are. So, again, I want to thank you for your time today. I'm so grateful for everything that the Rotary Club of Tulsa does for our city. And if any of you need quality health care, or if you want to join me and meet Hulk Hogan, we'll see you out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bynum. First off, no offense, but if our programs committee had known that Hulk Hogan was in town today, we may have had to bump you.
I would have gladly seen it.
All right. Second, I really appreciate the water in the river. I know it sounds silly to say it that way, but just a quick story. When my family moved from Corpus Christi to Sand Springs in the mid-'90s, my thought at the time when we drove over the Highway 97 river was that's why this place is called Sand Springs. There's a huge bed of sand in the middle of this city. I didn't learn till later it was actually a river. So I really am happy to see on my jogs what we've built out there. Would also finish that in 2008 when I moved back to Tulsa, I knew I was taking a bit of a risk. And if not for what has happened over the last several years, including the last 8 years, there's a good chance me and other young professionals would not be here. So again, Mayor, thank you for everything that you've accomplished for this city, moving us forward, and good luck on your next endeavor. Thank you. A book recognizing today's program will be presented to our partner in education school, Celia Clinton Elementary. Today's book is Mayor Good Boy. Upcoming programs, December 11th, Jeff Martin, the founder of Magic City Books, will be our guest, and December 18th will be our very special holiday program, which never disappoints. Upcoming events, as I mentioned before, Salvation Army bell ringing will be tomorrow. I believe Shanna Vollmer will be in the hallway taking sign-ups, so go see her if you've not yet signed up. Our holiday party is also tomorrow evening. Be sure to sign up for that. The link is in your Monday message. And of course, Shop with the Cop, as I'd mentioned before, will be this Saturday morning. Special thanks to our gold sponsors, We Be Trees, Tim Knoll, Max Electric Supply, Jack McGlumphy, Coldwell Banker Select, Sheree Gardner, OK Ethics, Mary Lytle, and this week's silver sponsors, J.D. Young, Doug Stewart, Trust Company of Oklahoma, Michael Hairston, Allen Edward Incorporated, Chip Edwards, and bronze sponsors, Argent Trust, Harvey Rowe and Kenny Brown, Claude Neon Federal Signs, James Adair, Gable Gottwalls, Jeff Hassel, Paul Rossler, and Adam Doverspike, Hall Estel, Tom Klenda, and Daniel Ketchum. Meetings today, Crescendo Music Grants will meet after today's meeting in room 231. Club Foundation Grants will meet in room 232. Club Foundation Development in room 233. And the Above and Beyond Awards, which Mayor Bynum mentioned, will be meeting after today in Parker Hall. I'll close today's meeting with the quote from Major League legend Ernie Banks. He said, "My theme is, the spirit of friendship is the balance of life. Not money, not the World Series. It's friendship. The relationships I have with people, that's enough to keep me happy." I really think that does summarize the magic of Rotary in some respects. Thank you for joining our meeting today. We're adjourned.
There's something to our collective energy. When we gather each year, everyone belongs to something bigger than themselves. It is magnetic. It is moving. It is magic. We share friendship, experiences and new perspectives, awakening inspiration, unleashing possibility in ourselves, our communities, and around the world. It's a phenomenon like no other. Join us in Calgary for the 2025 Rotary International Convention and discover magic all around.